The Perseus Rift was where maps ended. No trade routes crossed it. No colonies survived near it. Even smugglers avoided its black waters of space, where stars flickered like dying candles and entire fleets vanished without distress calls. Among the civilizations of the galaxy, the Rift had another name, the Graveyard, and tonight, something inside it was awake. The exploration vessel Valor drifted silently through the darkness, its silver hull reflecting faint pulses of red nebula lightning. Every system aboard groaned under the pressure of gravitational distortions. On the bridge, Captain Aaron Kale stared through the forward viewport with growing unease. The Rift looked wrong. Space itself seemed wounded. Long scars of pale light stretched between distant stars like cracks in glass. Shadows moved where shadows shouldn't exist. Even the ship's AI had begun repeating navigation errors in a trembling voice. Warning. Spatial inconsistency detected. A young officer turned nervously toward the captain. Sir, long-range sensors just failed again. Aaron didn't answer immediately. His four eyes remained fixed on the abyss ahead. Reset them. We already did. 3 times another pulse echoed through the ship. Not an explosion, not an impact. Sound. Deep, metallic, ancient, like a giant heartbeat buried beneath space itself. Several crew members exchanged frightened glances. Nobody spoke the thought aloud, because everyone aboard knew the stories, human stories, the old legends, claimed humans once crossed the galaxy in world-sized warships, conquering horrors that no species dared face. They were described as monsters wearing the skin of saviors, violent, brilliant, unstoppable, but humans weren't real, not anymore. 600 years without a single sighting had reduced them to myth. Children's tales. Ghost stories. Aaron had never believed any of it until now. The communications officer suddenly stiffened in his chair. Captain, what is it? I'm receiving a transmission. The bridge fell silent. That's impossible, another officer whispered. There's nobody out here. The signal crackled through layers of static so dense it sounded submerged underwater. Aaron slowly approached the console. Source? The officer swallowed hard. Unknown. But it's old. Extremely old. How old? The answer came quietly. Approximately 612 years. Every face on the bridge turned pale. The transmission repeated, again and again, like a distress call trapped in time. Aaron felt something cold tighten in his chest. Play it. Static exploded. Across the bridge speakers. For several seconds, there was only noise. Then came screaming, gunfire, metal tearing apart. Someone shouting orders in a language the ship automatically translated. Human. The voice was distorted, exhausted, barely holding together. Repeat. Breach on deck 7. They're inside the walls. Another scream cut through the recording. Then silence. Heavy breathing followed. A man speaking again. Calmer this time. Too calm. The kind of calm that only came after hope was already dead. If this transmission is received, humanity has fallen. The bridge crew stood frozen. Even the ship seemed quieter now. The message continued. To whoever finds this, avoid Soul at all costs. Suddenly, violent impacts thundered through the background of the recording. Weapons fire. Something monstrous roaring in the distance. Then the final sentence came through the static. They are coming. The transmission ended. No one moved. No one breathed. Then every alarm aboard the Valor erupted simultaneously. Red lights flooded the bridge. The navigation officer shouted first, "Contact!" Another voice followed instantly. Multiple contacts. Aaron spun toward the sensor display and felt his blood turn to ice dot shapes, enormous shapes, emerging from the darkness, beyond the rift. At first they looked like drifting moons, then the scans adjusted scale, not moons, ships. The nearest vessel alone was nearly 30 kilometers long. Black armor covered its surface like volcanic stone. Entire sections of the hull were torn open, exposing glowing interiors and shattered weapons, batteries the size of cities, and there were dozens more behind it. An entire fleet, dead, silent, no engine trails, no communications, just drifting slowly out of the abyss like predators waking from hibernation. One crew member whispered in disbelief, "Those can't be real." Then the main view screen flickered. A symbol ignited across the nearest warship's hull. White, sharp, ancient. A blue planet surrounded by stars. Below it, words appeared in human text. Earth Defense Fleet 7th Armada. The bridge descended into panic. Captain, they're targeting us. Weapon systems are activating. No energy readings. How are they powering those things? The massive battleship began turning toward the Valor slowly, deliberately, like a giant waking eye. Aaron's breathing became shallow. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run, but the Valor couldn't move. Its engines had shut down the moment the fleet appeared, as if something aboard those ancient ships had reached out and seized control. Then a new transmission arrived. Live not. Automated, the signal opened with heavy static before a voice emerged. Deep human. And very much alive, unknown vessel. You should not be here. The bridge crew stared at one another in horror. Aaron stepped toward the console carefully. This is Captain Aaron Kale of the exploration vessel Valor, he said cautiously. Identify yourself. For a moment only static answered. Then the human voice returned. Cold, tired, ancient. We are what remains of humanity. Suddenly, another sound echoed behind the transmission. Scratching metal, bending, distant screams. The human voice changed instantly. Urgency. Replacing exhaustion, they found us. Warning. Sirens exploded through the transmission. Then came the final words, run. The transmission cut off. For 3 full seconds, the bridge of the Valor stood frozen in absolute silence. Then chaos erupted. Captain, multiple energy spikes detected. The human ships are deploying weapons. No, wait. They're targeting something behind them. Aaron turned sharply toward the forward display. The massive battleships were moving now, not drifting, forming ranks. Ancient engines ignited beneath shattered armor plating, glowing with a cold blue fire that illuminated the darkness of the rift. And beyond them, something moved. At first it looked like smoke spreading through space. Then the scanners focused. Aaron's stomach tightened. Ships, thousands of them, broken, twisted, dead. Vessels from dozens of civilizations fused together into a horrifying mass of drifting wreckage, and they were accelerating, straight toward the human fleet. One of the bridge officers whispered in disbelief. Those ships, they're centuries old. Another officer zoomed the sensor feed closer. Bodies covered the outer hulls, some frozen in space. Suits, others merged directly into the metal itself, as though the ships had grown flesh. Then the wreckage moved. Not mechanically, organically. The entire graveyard fleet pulsed like something alive. Aaron felt fear crawl up his spine. What in the stars is that? No one answered. Suddenly, every human battleship opened fire. The darkness exploded into blinding white light. Gigantic rail cannons thundered across the void, hurling projectiles so massive they distorted gravity around them. Beams of plasma sliced through entire clusters of infected wrecks. But the graveyard fleet kept coming. The destroyed ships simply stitched themselves back together. Metal twisted. Bone regrew. Dead. Things climbed across the hulls. Then the screaming started. The bridge audio systems intercepted. Thousands of emergency frequencies at once. Alien voices, human voices, all crying the same thing. Don't let them inside. A massive infected cruiser slammed directly into one of the human destroyers. For a brief moment, both ships disappeared in fire. Then something burst. Out from the explosion, a creature long and pale. Limbs stretched unnaturally across space as if gravity meant nothing to it. More followed behind. At hundreds, the human fleet immediately changed. Formation, sharp, precise, ruthless. Aaron watched in stunned silence as several damaged human ships deliberately turned themselves toward the enemy swarm. Captain, the navigation officer whispered. What are they doing? The answer came seconds later. The human vessels detonated. Miniature suns erupted inside the rift. The shockwave vaporized thousands of infected ships instantly. But even after the explosion faded, something still moved inside the fire. The human voice returned over comms, harsher this time. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Elias Ward of the 7th Armada. A grainy image appeared on the screen. The bridge crew collectively recoiled. The human admiral looked ancient. His gray uniform was burned and torn. A deep scar crossed one side of his face, disappearing beneath a mechanical eye glowing faint red in the darkness. But it was his expression that unsettled Erend most. The man looked exhausted beyond reason, like someone who had been fighting a war for centuries and forgotten what peace felt like. Ward spoke. Quickly, you are in immediate danger. Leave the rift now. Erend stepped closer. What are those things? For the first time, emotion crossed the Admiral's face, not fear. Hatred. Pure, exhausted hatred. The reason humanity disappeared. The bridge lights flickered, violently. A loud metallic bang echoed somewhere, deep inside the Valor. Everyone froze. Another bang followed. Closer, the ship AI suddenly spoke in a trembling voice. Warning, unauthorized biological presence detected. Erend's blood ran cold. Location? The answer came instantly. Cargo Deck 3. A crew member stared at the monitor in horror. That deck was sealed. Then the security feed activated automatically. Static flooded the screen. Shapes moved through the darkness. Crew bodies littered the corridor floor, some torn apart, others changing. Their skin stretched unnaturally while black veins crawled across their faces. Bones cracked as their limbs elongated into spider-like forms. One infected crew member slowly lifted its head toward the camera and smiled. The feed cut to black panic exploded across the bridge. They got inside. How? We never opened docking access. Admiral Ward's voice thundered through the speakers. Listen carefully, Captain. If even one infected organism reaches populated space, billions die. The scratching sound from earlier echoed faintly behind him. Closer now. Ward glanced briefly over his shoulder. For the first time, Erend noticed the Admiral was holding a pistol. Not casually, desperately, as though expecting something to burst through the door at any second. Erend swallowed hard. What are these creatures? The Admiral's mechanical eye focused directly into the camera. They are called the Ver. The name alone seemed heavy. Ancient. Wrong. They consume civilizations, Ward continued. Memory, identity, biology, entire species become extensions of a single hive. More alarms erupted. Aboard the Valor deck after deck went. Dark security teams stopped responding. The infected spread, impossibly fast. One of the officers suddenly backed away from his console. Black veins crawled slowly up his neck. The others stared in horror. No. The officer whispered shakily. No, no, no. His spine snapped violently backward. Bones burst through his skin. The bridge exploded into screaming. Before anyone could react, Admiral Ward shouted, Get down! A human projectile smashed through the infected officer's skull from impossible distance. The body collapsed. Instantly. Everyone stared speechlessly at the smoking hole. Through the bridge wall, somewhere beyond the viewport, one of the giant human battleships still faced them. A sniper round from kilometers away, perfectly aimed. Ward lowered his weapon slowly. Now you understand, he said grimly. Why the galaxy feared us. Then, every human ship in the Armada suddenly turned toward the deeper darkness of the rift. Erend followed their gaze. And his breath stopped. Something enormous was emerging behind the graveyard fleet, not a ship, something alive. Its silhouette blocked out entire stars, and, for the first time since the nightmare began, Admiral Elias Ward looked afraid. Impossible, he whispered. The crew of the Valor stared at the growing darkness in horror. Then the ancient human admiral uttered the words that froze every soul aboard the ship. It found us. The darkness moved, not through space, through everything. Stars bent around it, light warped near its edges as if reality itself was trying not to touch it. On the bridge of the Valor, nobody spoke, nobody breathed. The object emerging from deep within the Perseus rift was so enormous that the human battleship surrounding it looked microscopic by comparison, and it was getting closer, slowly, deliberately, like a predator that already knew escape was impossible. Captain Erend. Cale forced himself to speak. What is that? The answer did not come immediately. On the main screen, Admiral Elias Ward stood motionless aboard his flagship. His scarred face had gone pale beneath the bridge's flashing red emergency lights. Then he whispered. We called it the Harbinger. A violent tremor shook the Veiler. Warning. Sirens screamed through every corridor. More. Decks had gone silent. The infection was spreading fast. Security feeds flickered randomly across bridge. Monitors, flashes of nightmare images appearing for only seconds at a time. Crew members dragging themselves across. Blood-covered floors, doors bending outward from impossible force. Something moving inside ventilation. Shafts. Watching. Hunting. Aaron turned sharply toward the tactical station. How long until the infected reached the bridge? The officer's hands shook over the controls. 6 minutes. Maybe less. Across the rift, the human fleet accelerated into defensive formation around the Veilor. Thousands of ancient warships moved with terrifying precision. No hesitation, no fear, as though they had performed this exact maneuver countless times. Before Ward's voice hardened again. Captain, your vessel can no longer be saved. Aaron felt anger rise through the fear. There are still people alive on this ship. Not for long. The brutal honesty stunned the bridge into silence. Ward stepped closer to his transmission camera. Listen carefully. The Veer do not merely infect biology. They infect thought, memory, fear. The longer exposure continues, the harder it becomes to distinguish reality from their influence. Almost immediately, one of the crew members began screaming. Everyone turned. The navigator clawed frantically at his own face. They're inside my head. He shrieked. Get them out! Before anyone could stop him, he ripped a sidearm from a security officer and fired into the bridge window repeatedly. The reinforced glass cracked. Beyond it, the darkness outside pulsed for a split second. Something looked back, a gigantic eye opened. Within the Harbinger's shadow. The navigator froze instantly. Blood streamed from his nose, then he whispered softly, It sees us. His body collapsed lifelessly onto the floor. Several crew members backed away in panic. Aaron felt his own pulse, hammering uncontrollably now. Even looking at the thing felt dangerous, wrong, like staring into the grave of the universe itself. Then the human fleet attacked. The stars disappeared. Beneath a storm of fire, human battleships unleashed everything they had simultaneously. Rail cannons, plasma lances, antimatter strikes, weapons powerful enough to crack planets apart. The rift became an ocean of explosions. But when the fire cleared, the Harbinger remained untouched. Low sound rolled across space, not through speakers. Inside their minds, a voice, ancient beyond comprehension. You cannot hide them from us forever. Crew members collapsed, screaming. Blood poured from ears and eyes, even hardened human. Officers aboard Ward's flagship struggled to remain. Standing, Aaron nearly fell to his knees. The voice felt enormous, like a mountain pressing against his thoughts. And beneath the words lurked something far worse than hatred, hunger. Ward shouted over the chaos. All ships, execute burn protocol. The human fleet instantly changed strategy. Aaron watched in horror as dozens of damaged human ships suddenly broke formation and accelerated directly toward the infected graveyard. Fleet collision course, no? Aaron whispered. The humans weren't retreating, they were sacrificing themselves, one by one. The ships detonated in catastrophic nuclear fire. Entire sections of the rift vanished inside expanding spheres of white-hot destruction. The shockwaves ripped infected vessels apart by the thousands, but the Harbinger continued, forward, unaffected, unstoppable. Then, something slammed against the bridge doors aboard the Veilor. Everyone spun toward the sea. Sound, another impact followed. Metal bent inward, violently. The infected had arrived. Security officers raised their weapons with trembling hands. Silence fell. Then came, scratching, soft, patient, almost curious. A childlike voice suddenly echoed from the other side of the door. Captain, please help us. One of the younger crew members stepped forward instinctively. I know that voice. Ward's expression darkened immediately. Do not open that door, the voice came again, crying now. It hurts. The crew member reached the controls. Aaron grabbed him instantly. That's not your sister anymore. The scratching stopped. For 3 horrible seconds, nothing moved. Then the bridge doors exploded inward. The infected rushed through the smoke. Once humanoid creatures hurled themselves across the room with animal speed. Their bodies twisted unnaturally, bones exposed beneath torn flesh, glowing black veins pulsing. Beneath translucent skin, gunfire erupted. Instantly, screams followed. One creature landed directly on a security officer and tore through armor like paper. Another sprinted across the ceiling toward Erend and suddenly vanished. A bright blue projectile punched through its skull midair. Then, another, and another. Human soldiers stormed through the ruined entrance, black armored figures moving with terrifying efficiency. No wasted movement, no panic. Their rifles thundered through the bridge with surgical precision. Within seconds, the infected lay motionless. The human leader removed his helmet slowly. A woman, scarred, exhausted, eyes harder than steel. "Captain Erend," she said calmly. "You're coming with us." Erend stared at her speechlessly. "You boarded us during that chaos?" The woman glanced briefly toward the viewport where the Harbinger loomed larger than ever. "Trust me," she said grimly. "This is the calm part." Suddenly, every light aboard the Valor died. Complete darkness swallowed the bridge. Then came a new sound from somewhere, deep within the ship. A massive metallic groan, as though something gigantic had just awakened below them. The human soldier slowly raised her weapon toward the floor beneath. Their feet, for the first time, fear crossed her face, and that terrified Erend more than anything else. Then the floor began to move. The floor beneath the Valor was no longer part of the ship. It was breathing. A slow, rhythmic rise and fall echoed through the metal deck, as if something vast had taken residence inside the vessel's skeleton, and was now stretching after a long sleep. Captain Erend Kale stumbled backward as the human soldiers immediately formed a defensive circle the woman commander's weapon tracked. "The floor without blinking. Everyone," she said quietly. "Back away from the center." Erend forced himself to speak. "What is that?" No one answered because they already knew. The infection wasn't just on the ship, it was the ship. A sudden metallic shriek tore through Deck 3 below them. Then another, and another, like claws scraping through steel ribs. The Valor AI flickered across broken speakers, voice distorted and panicked. Structural integrity compromised. Unknown biomass integration. Ship consciousness unstable. "Ship consciousness?" Erend repeated. The human commander finally glanced at him. "They don't just infect crews," she said coldly. "They rewrite vessels." Before anyone could respond, the entire corridor outside the bridge went dark. Emergency. Lights flickered once, then died total. Blackout. Only the faint glow from weapon sights and HUD visors remained. Something moved in the darkness beyond the open doorway, slow, dragging. Then, faster. A shape emerged. It was once a crew member, now it was something else entirely. Its body had fused, partially with ship plating, metal rods protruding through its spine like crude armor. Its mouth split too far, jaw unhinged, filled with broken teeth and fragments of wiring. And it was smiling. More shapes appeared behind it, dozens, then hundreds. The corridor outside the bridge was full. Living wave of corrupted flesh and metal crawling through. The ship like a parasite consuming bone. "Hold the line," the human commander ordered. Gunfire erupted instantly. The bridge became a war zone. Erend ducked behind a console as plasma rounds burned through incoming infected bodies. The smell of scorched metal and burned flesh filled the air, but every fallen creature got back up, slightly different, slightly more broken, and slightly closer. On the comlink, Admiral Elias Ward's voice suddenly returned, strained, urgent. "Valor crew, listen to me carefully. You are not fighting individuals anymore." A pause, then the worst possible truth. "You are inside a converted hive vessel." Erend's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" he shouted into the comm. Ward's voice dropped lower. "It means your ship is alive, and it is learning." As if responding to his words, the entire vessel shuddered violently. The corridor outside reshaped itself. Walls bent inward, doors fused shut, new pathways formed, where none existed before. The ship was changing, architecture in real time. The human commander swore, under her breath, "We need extraction now." But the comm signal suddenly fractured. Ward's voice broke apart into static. Then something else spoke. Through it, not Ward, not human. A voice that sounded layered with thousands of whispers. "We are not infection." The bridge lights flickered violently. Crew members screamed. As veins darkened beneath their skin again, Aaron stepped back in. Horror. It's inside the comm system. The voice continued, calm, patient, unnatural. "Our improvement." The infected outside the bridge stopped. Attacking all at once, silence fell. Every twisted body in the corridor turned its head toward the bridge doors. In perfect synchronization, then they began to speak, not aloud. Inside every mind aboard the Valor. Join. The human commander fired directly into the ceiling. Cut all neural interfaces. Now, alarm screamed. Crew ripped data ports from their suits. But it was too late for some. 2 crew members collapsed instantly. Their bodies went still, then stood back up as, black smiling, they turned toward Aaron. "I feel better," one of them whispered. Then he attacked. Gunfire exploded again, but now confusion spread faster than fear. Friend became enemy in seconds. The bridge descended into controlled chaos. Aaron grabbed a fallen weapon and fired blindly as shadows moved in every direction. Then, everything stopped. A deafening silence crushed the bridge. The infected froze. Mid-motion, even the light stabilized. The human commander slowly lowered her weapon. "That wasn't them," she said quietly. Aaron looked around. "What do you mean?" She pointed toward the viewport. Outside, the Perseus rift was no longer dark. It was glowing. And within that glow, the graveyard fleet had started to move again, but not randomly, not chaotically, in formation. Perfect formation, like an army waking up after receiving orders. And at its center, the Harbinger pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Then all at once, every human warship in the surrounding space powered down simultaneously. Aaron stared in shock. What just happened? The human commander's voice dropped to a whisper. "They've taken control of the dead fleet." On the main screen, Admiral Ward reappeared, but something was wrong. His image flickered. His eyes no longer focused correctly, and when he spoke, his voice was fractured. "They're rewriting everything." A long pause, then his final warning. "Do not let them reach Earth." The transmission cut out. Immediately after, every infected body aboard the Valor stopped moving. Not dead, not alive. Waiting. Then, as one, they turned toward the bridge doors. Not attacking, not breaking in, just standing there, listening, as if something far larger had just finished giving them instructions. The human commander slowly backed toward Aaron. "We're not dealing with a virus anymore," she said quietly. Aaron swallowed hard. "What are we dealing with?" She looked out toward the rift again, and for the first time, she looked afraid. "We're dealing with something that learned how to win." Outside, the graveyard fleet began to accelerate toward the galaxy and Earth. Hook. The dead were no longer dead, and they were coming home. The graveyard fleet was no longer drifting. It was marching. Through the Perseus rift, thousands of dead ships moved in perfect synchronization, their broken hulls aligned like soldiers responding to a silent command. At their center, the Harbinger pulsed with slow, deliberate rhythm, each pulse bending nearby starlight into distorted spirals. Captain Aaron Kale stood frozen on the shattered bridge of the Valor, unable to look away. The human commander beside him tightened her grip on her rifle. "They've unified the infection," she said quietly. Aaron's voice barely came out. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer immediately, because outside the viewport, something far worse was emerging. Behind the graveyard fleet, space itself began to ripple, not tear, not break, dissolve, like reality forgetting its own shape. A low gravitational hum spread across the rift, vibrating through every structure aboard the Valor. Then the human admiral's voice returned through a backup channel. Admiral Elias Ward, now speaking from the distant flagship Resolute. But his tone had changed. Less certainty, more urgency. "All surviving units. Confirm visual on outer anomaly." Aaron watched the sensor feed switch. and his mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. At first, it looked like darkness, a shadow without form. Then stars began to vanish inside it, not destroyed, consumed, one by one. Entire solar masses disappeared as the object advanced. The ship's AI whispered in fear. Unidentified structure. Mass exceeding planetary scale. Biological signature confirmed. The human commander whispered a single word. Devourer. Erin turned sharply. You know what that is? Her jaw tightened. No, she said. But humanity does. The transmission from Ward stabilized again. His face appeared on screen, now lit by flickering red alarms. Behind him, human officers rushed across the bridge of the Resolute. Listen carefully, Ward said. What you are seeing is not an invasion fleet. Pause. The weight of centuries pressed into his next words. It is a migration. The Devourer moved, closer, and with it came silence. No communications from nearby, systems, no sensor feedback from infected wrecks. Even the Harbinger's pulses slowed, as if something larger had taken. Command. Erin felt it then, a pressure in his mind, not thoughts, absence of thought, like something trying to erase awareness itself. He stumbled. Back. Something is inside my head. The human commander grabbed him. Don't focus on it. That's how it anchors. But it was too late for others. One of the surviving crew collapsed suddenly, eyes wide empty. Then he smiled gently. They're not enemies, he whispered. Another crew member turned. What are you talking about? The infected man looked at them with calm certainty. Their relief. Then his body collapsed as if all muscle structure simply stopped obeying physics. On the main screen, Ward shouted, Emergency Protocol Black Sun, initiate. Human fleets across the galaxy began moving simultaneously. Entire armadas detached from defensive lines and began heading toward Solaran's. Eyes widened. You're bringing them here? Ward's expression hardened. We are not bringing them, he said. We are preparing the battlefield. The Devourer finally entered the outer galaxy, and reality broke. Stars near its path collapsed into silence. Nebulae evaporated into nothingness. Entire regions of space turned dark as if existence itself was being switched off. The graveyard fleet accelerated faster, now visibly coordinated, strategic, not purposeful. Moper. Harbinger's eye-like core rotated toward the human fleet, and for the first time it spoke clearly, not through minds, not through fear, through space itself. You were never the prey. Every human ship across the battlefield froze. Even Ward went silent. The human commander beside Erin lowered her weapon slightly. What did it say? The answer came immediately, not from the Devourer, from Ward. His voice was barely audible. It learned us. Erin turned sharply. What does that mean? Ward's face darkened. It means the Ver were never the apex. Infection, a long pause, then the truth. Dropped like a planetary impact. They were a warning system. The Devourer advanced again, and this time, the Harbinger fleet bowed toward it, not in resistance, in submission. Erin felt his stomach twist. They're obeying it. The human commander stepped back slowly. No, she whispered. They're not obeying it. Her eyes widened in horror. They're introducing it to us. Suddenly, every infected vessel across the rift aligned perfectly toward the known galaxy, toward inhabited space, toward Earth. Ward's voice returned one last time, urgent, broken. If it reaches Sol. It doesn't destroy worlds. Static burst across the channel, then the final warning. It unmakes civilizations from memory. The transmission cut. Silence swallowed the bridge. Erin stared at the approaching darkness, and for the first time since the beginning of the nightmare, he understood something horrifying. There would be no war, no defense, no victory, only recognition. The Devourer wasn't coming to kill humanity. It was coming to ensure humanity had never existed at all outside the viewport. The Harbinger fleet fully synchronized, and together, they began their final acceleration toward the heart of the galaxy. Earth was no longer a target. It was the last memory left to erase. The galaxy had always believed Earth was fragile, a pale blue world tucked safely behind forgotten trade routes. Ignored for centuries as empires rose and fell elsewhere. They were wrong, and now, it was waking up. The transmission from Admiral Elias Ward had barely finished decaying into static when space above Sol began to fracture with synchronized precision. Not chaos, not panic. Response. Captain. Aaron Cale stood on the bridge of the Valor, now partially repaired by human engineers who had boarded in silence after the last attack. No one spoke, not after what they had seen. Outside the viewport, Earth hung in space like a sleeping eye opening for the first time in centuries. Then the oceans moved, not metaphorically, literally. Massive sections of Earth's surface began to split apart, revealing structures buried so deep they had never appeared in any known geological scan. The human commander beside Aaron exhaled slowly. "They're activating." Aaron turned sharply. "Those are cities." She shook her head. "No." A pause. "Those are war engines." The oceans of Earth parted fully, revealing colossal metallic forms rising from abyssal trenches. Titan class. Constructs. Ancient armored impossible. In scale, each one larger than moon colonies, each one older than most known civilizations, and each one bearing the same symbol Aaron had seen on the drifting human fleet. Earth Defense Fleet across the galaxy, every sensor array focused on Sol. Even the Devourer's advance slowed slightly, not out of fear, out of curiosity. On Earth, deep beneath the crust, something massive rotated into alignment. A signal echoed outward, not broadcast, not transmitted, released, and suddenly, every dormant human warship hidden across forgotten systems awakened simultaneously, dead, space stations reignited, silent fortresses began to breathe. Again, entire fleets that had been missing for centuries responded to Earth's call like organs inside a waking body. The human commander finally spoke again. "We weren't their first fleet," she said quietly. Aaron frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed toward the growing convergence on the tactical display. "Look at the design. Evolution." Ships were arriving from dozens of eras, some ancient and rusted, some sleek and modern. Some so advanced they bent light around them, but all of them carried the same doctrine: survival through total war. Then Admiral Ward reappeared on a fractured emergency channel. His face was paler than before, and behind him, the bridge of the Resolute shook violently. "Sol system is now fully active," he said. A pause, then the truth. "We are no longer defending Earth." He turned slightly, and for the first time, Aaron saw what lay behind him. A massive chamber. Inside, a machine, so large it extended beyond the camera frame. Human. Technicians were awakening it manually, and every step they took looked like ritual rather than engineering. Ward continued. "We built the Titans for one purpose." The Devourer entered the outer Sol perimeter, and reality trembled. Again, its presence alone caused Neptune's orbit to distort. Saturn's rings began collapsing inward as if gravity had lost definition. Then the Harbinger fleet arrived. Behind it, perfect formation, perfect silence. And then, they stopped. Aaron felt his breath catch. Why did they stop? The human commander's eyes narrowed. Because something just woke up in front of them. On Earth, the final locks released and the Titans rose all at once, from oceans, from mountains, from orbital silence, from hidden dimensions buried beneath the planets. Crust colossal human war constructs unfolded, like living mythology, but they were not alone. Each Titan was accompanied by fleets of smaller warships emerging from concealed planetary vaults, and at their center, Earth itself began to glow, not with light, with activation. Ward's voice returned, quieter now. Every civilization assumes humanity became extinct 6 centuries ago. Pause. The Devourer advanced again, slowly now, carefully. "We didn't go extinct." Ward's eyes sharpened. "We went offline." Suddenly, every Titan across Sol aligned its weapons toward the incoming darkness, and the galaxy finally understood. Humanity had not been surviving. They had been waiting. Aaron whispered, "Waiting for what?" The human commander answered softly, "For it to come back." The Devourer's voice returned, louder now, angrier. "You were erased once before." The Titans responded, instantly, Every human warship across the system lit up with synchronized energy signatures. Admiral, Ward gave the final command. Awaken humanity's memory. And Earth answered. A pulse erupted from the planet so powerful it bent space around it. Every hidden fleet activated. Every dormant weapon came online. Every human system across the galaxy synchronized into one consciousness-level network. Aaron staggered backward as the Valor itself was absorbed into the network. Controlled, integrated, and, for the first time he saw it, humanity was not a civilization. It was a distributed war machine spanning the galaxy. The Devourer paused. Again, for the first time, it hesitated, and that hesitation was all humanity needed. The sleeping Titans were no longer sleeping, and Earth had just declared war on the darkness itself. The Devourer hesitated. It was the first imperfection in its advance since the beginning of time. Across the Sol system, silence fell so completely it felt artificial. Even the gravitational distortions paused, as if reality itself was holding its breath. Captain Aaron Kale stood aboard the Valor, now fully integrated into the human battle network. His mind linked to thousands of ships at once, and what he felt was not unity. It was weight. Infinite. Crushing readiness. The human commander beside him tightened her grip on her weapon. They're waking everything, she said quietly. Aaron stared at the tactical feed. What else is there to wake? She didn't answer, because the answer was already unfolding in front of them. On Earth, the Titans completed full activation. Massive war constructs, some embedded into oceans, others hidden beneath tectonic plates, rotated into combat alignment. Entire continents trembled as planetary-scale systems engaged after centuries of silence. Then something far deeper stirred. Below Earth's crust, a structure older than any recorded civilization began to unfold. Not a machine, not a weapon, a memory engine. Admiral Elias Ward's voice returned through the unified network, no longer fragmented. It was calm now, focused. All Allied fleets. Final protocol is now active. A pause. Then, the truth pressed into every connected mind. We are not defending Earth, Aaron. Already knew that part. But Ward continued. We are defending the fact that Earth ever existed. The words landed like a physical udar across the network. Across Sol, alien commanders listened in stunned silence. The Devourer moved again, this time faster, as if sensing urgency. Its massive form stretched across space, consuming starlight and widening waves of null space. Behind it, the Harbinger fleet followed like obedient shadows. And then the Titans fired. The first volley was not light, it was absence, entire. Sections of space vanished as human anti-reality. Weapons triggered localized entropy collapse. Regions of vacuum folded inward, tearing at the Devourer's outer structure. For the first time, the entity recoiled, not injured, but surprised. Aaron staggered as the Valor shook violently. What did they just do? He shouted. The commander answered without looking away from the battlefield. They told physics to forget something. Another volley followed. This time, gravity inverted across a 1,000-kilometer radius. The Harbinger fleet was thrown into chaotic disarray as dead ships collided, their infected structures destabilizing. But still, the Devourer advanced, unbroken, unchanged. Ward's voice sharpened. Phase 2. Release the memory cores. Across the system, Titan structures opened. Inside them were not weapons, but archives, massive neural vaults containing every human war memory ever recorded. Every battle, every extinction event prevented, every species saved or sacrificed, and then humanity did something no other civilization had ever dared attempt. They unleashed their history as a weapon, and screamed as billions of battlefield memories flooded the shared network. He saw wars that burned entire galaxies. He saw human fleets sacrificing themselves to seal dimensional breaches. He saw children trained as navigators because adult minds broke too easily under interstellar warfare. And he understood humanity wasn't fighting as a species, it was fighting as a collective scar tissue of the universe. The Devourer slowed again. For the first time, its surface flickered. The Harbinger fleet reacted instantly, accelerating forward to shield it, but Ward gave the final escalation order, Sol Protocol. Omega, Earth responded, and the sun changed. Sol itself began collapsing inward, not into a supernova, but into a controlled singularity state, a weaponized stellar core compression designed by humanity long before any current civilization had existed. The entire solar system became a trigger, a single, unified weapon. The Devourer finally spoke, again louder, angrier. You cannot kill what has no beginning. Ward's expression didn't change, but his voice lowered. We. Noah paused, then the final command. But we can make sure it never reaches the next one. The Titans locked onto target. Every human ship in the system. Synchronized. Aaron felt it then, not fear, acceptance. The end was close. The Devourer surged forward for a final strike, and the entire Sol system ignited, not as destruction, but as containment. A collapsing starfield lattice formed around the entity, trapping it inside a shrinking cage of engineered space-time. The Harbinger fleet shattered instantly under the pressure. Dead ships disintegrated into dust across the void, and for a single moment everything was still. Then Ward whispered, "Now!" The cage collapsed. Reality folded inward. The Devourer screamed, across all dimensions simultaneously, and silence swallowed the galaxy. Aaron collapsed to his knees as the network dissolved around him. The battlefield vanished from all sensors. No signal remained. No fleet, no enemy. Only emptiness. The human commander stood slowly. Did we win? No one answered immediately. Then, far away in the dark between stars, something faint pulsed once. Ward's final transmission came through, broken, distant, fading. If you're hearing this, Sol has done its job. A pause, then the last line. Do not search for Earth. Static swallowed everything. Aaron stared into the void where a star used to be and realized something horrifying. The war wasn't over. It had simply been moved somewhere. No one could follow. Hook. Earth was gone, but something was still looking for it. Space above Sol was empty, not peaceful, not quiet, empty, as if reality had been scraped clean and cauterized. Captain Aaron Kale floated in the command spine of the Valor, now barely a functioning hull held together by emergency field generators. The human commander stood beside him, motionless, staring into the void where Earth had been moments ago. No stars, no debris, no signal, only a faint distortion in space that refused to resolve into anything recognizable. Aaron finally spoke, his voice hollow. We lost everything. The commander didn't answer immediately. Her eyes tracked invisible readings only she could see through the neural interface still linked to Sol's remnants. Then she whispered, "No." A pause. "You're looking at it wrong." Aaron turned toward her. "What does that mean?" She raised a trembling hand toward the empty region of space, and for the first time, the sensors reacted. A pulse. Weak. Impossible. Then another. The void wasn't empty. It was sealed. On a scale so vast the mind refused to interpret it. Something had wrapped itself around the absence left behind by the Devourer's containment. Collapse. Ward's final maneuver hadn't destroyed the enemy. It had imprisoned it outside perception itself. And Earth had stepped outside the visible universe with it. The human commander exhaled slowly. "They didn't erase Earth," she said quietly. "They moved it off the board." Aaron felt a chill crawl through him. Off the board? Before she could answer, every remaining system aboard the Valor flickered violently. A new signal. Not incoming. Not transmitted. Returning. Across the dead zone where Sol once existed, reality rippled like water struck by an unseen hand. And then, a voice. Not from a ship. Not from a fleet. From space. Itself, calm, measured, human. "This is Earth Defense Command." The bridge froze. Aaron's breath caught. That voice was not Admiral Ward. It was something older, stronger, more absolute. The distortion in space intensified, forming a faint outline. like a memory trying to become physical again. Then, the voice continued. The devourer has been contained outside baseline. Reality, a pause. Then the part that shattered. Understanding. Humanity remains operational. The human commander closed her eyes briefly, as if she had expected this all. Along, Aaron stepped forward. Where is Earth? Silence. Then the answer came. Earth is where it has always been. The void shimmered. For a fraction of a second, something appeared. Not a planet, not a fleet. A structure of layered existence, overlapping dimensions like stacked reflections, cities, drifting across impossible geometries, Titan fleets orbiting, a star that no longer belonged to normal. Space, and at the center, Earth whole unbroken, but no longer alone in reality. Aaron stumbled backward. That's not possible. The commander finally looked at him. It never was, she said softly. The voice from the void returned. All external observers are advised. Sol system is no longer within accessible spacetime. A pause. Then, humanity thanks you for your participation in containment. Aaron felt something shift in his understanding of everything. We were helping you? A second voice answered. Not. Ward, not the commander. Millions of voices layered into one human calm certain. No, a pause. You were witnessing us. The void expanded. Again, and for a brief moment, Aaron saw it clearly. The true scale of humanity. Not a species, not an empire, but a distributed intelligence spread across collapsed and hidden realities, with Earth as its anchor point and war as its language. The Harbinger fleet appeared again in fragments at the edge of perception, no longer hostile, but inert, drifting like broken tools. The Devourer's presence was gone, not dead, not alive, simply excluded from existence. Aaron whispered, "What happens now?" Silence stretched. Then the final transmission arrived. Ward's voice. Faint, but alive. Now we wait. A pause. Because it will come again. The commander turned slightly. For what? Ward's answer was immediate, cold. Certain. For us to forget how to fight it. The void shimmered one last time. And Earth vanished from perception. Entirely. No trace, no signal. No proof it had ever been there. Only one final message remained. Embedded in the Valor's core systems. A warning. Promise. A truth carved into the fabric of space itself. Humanity does not survive wars. It survives endings. The Valor drifted alone in the dark between galaxies, and somewhere beyond reality. Earth watched, still waiting, still remembering, still ready, and in the silence between universes, something else began to wake again.